and I'm excited to be here with you today for this webinar focused on using templates in RightCapital. Templates are really designed to save you time and to make your lives easier as you're generating plans within RightCapital. And as of today, there are 7 different types of templates that we're able to create within the system. So in addition to several new template types being added within the last year or two, our product development team has also more recently implemented some really helpful quality of life features when developing templates as well. So we're going to go over all of that and more today. Before we dive in, let's take a quick look at our agenda here. As I mentioned in today's presentation, we're going to be looking at how to create and apply each template type in RightCapital. We're going to explore how you can customize templates to suit your needs and your unique practice. And we're also going to touch on common use cases and best practices for each template type as well. As always, we will be doing a live Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you do have any questions as we're making our way through, feel free to write in using the Q&A field in the Zoom webinar control panel on your screen. I've got about 40 to 45 minutes of prepared content for you today, and then I'll be sticking around to answer as many questions as I can until the top of the hour. Perfect. That being said, I am going to take a quick moment to switch over to my RightCapital login here, so bear with me just a second and we can dive in. All right. So here we are in my RightCapital Advisor portal. And as you may have noticed here, we have our templates tab right at the top of the screen here in the upper menu bar. So for those of you who may have been with RightCapital for some time, you may remember that this used to be tucked away within the settings, but earlier in the year, we did relocate the templates module to be located right in the upper menu bar here, make it a little bit more obvious, a little easier to find. One thing I do want to quickly mention is that depending on the specific setup of your RightCapital account, it is possible for the Templates tab to be located within the More menu here to the right of the Help tab. So, this upper menu bar is only ever going to list the first 6 or 7 items. Everything else gets moved into the More menu here. So if you have some additional add-ons to your RightCapital account that are sort of pushing things to the right here, and you don't see the Templates tab, just make sure to check the More menu here. It should be listed to the left of Client Settings. That being said, let's go ahead and click into our templates module here. We have, as I mentioned, 7 different types of templates that we can create in RightCapital. So in the presentation today, I'm going to first start by explaining what each of these features is and where you can find it in RightCapital. Then I will show you how to create a template for that element, how to then apply that template, and discuss some use cases and best practices for each. So diving right in here, first we have report templates, which is probably the most self-explanatory type of template that we have here. This is where you can create templates for those PDF reports in RightCapital. For those of you who might be a bit newer, RightCapital does allow you to generate reports within each and every client plan. So I will pop into a client plan here so we can take a look at where you'd make that happen. So in Barry and Iris's plan here, let's say we wanted to generate a report for these clients. You can click into the gear icon in the upper right, and you'll find a report tab here where we can curate this report for the client. And in general, generating reports in RightCapital and creating report templates in RightCapital, comes down to the same sort of steps here. So just to walk through this process, if I was going to generate a report for Barry and Iris, I would walk down the checklist on my screen here. I would pick and choose which modules in RightCapital I would like to include in that client's report. You can always drag and drop these planning modules or individual tabs if you'd like to rearrange the page order of that report. Some of these items you may notice are underlined. That indicates that you can click into those specific sections of the report and be a little bit more specific with what you'd like to include there. So something like the retirement analysis, for example, gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of which specific pages and which specific charts you'd like to include there. And there are a few different planning modules that allow you to do something similar. So at the end of the day, after making your selections and rearranging the order, you can scroll down to the bottom of the page and click Download Selected Pages to generate that report. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward there in terms of generating reports. And when it comes to report templates and RightCapital, it's really a helpful way to save you some time. By default, whenever you pop into the report section of a client plan here, this checklist will be blank as a starting point. And if you find yourself maybe making the same selections multiple times for the same client or for multiple clients, that's where report templates can really come in handy. So I'm going to click back into the advisor portal here, dive back into that templates tab, and taking a look at the report templates section here, you'll notice that we have the exact same checklist. We can create a new template here by clicking the new template button in the upper right. We can rename those templates by simply clicking on the template name. Let's just call this one a basic report template. And then just like when generating reports for clients, we can make our selections. So in terms of use cases and potentially common examples of things that I've seen advisors do with report templates, some advisors like to create more basic templates with less planning modules, just the essentials here, things like the snapshot and the balance sheet, maybe the client's asset allocation, retirement analysis, and the blueprint. Those are some common examples of modules that I tend to see advisors include in a more basic report template. And then, once you've made your selections here, you can click Save in the lower right to save that template for future use. So, in addition to basic templates, I've then sometimes seen advisors create a more detailed template, something a little bit more thorough with more modules included. And that does tend to vary a little bit depending on the services that you offer. So, if you're someone who's a little bit more focused on investment planning, for example, you might check off more modules in the investment section. If you're doing more tax planning for a client, maybe tax estimate and tax strategies. So there's a lot of variety there in terms of the more detailed report templates. But you can really fine tune these templates to best suit your needs here. And as I mentioned, once you save these templates, you will be able to use these within your client plans to save you the trouble of having to, manually make those selections every time you're going to generate a report for a client. So if we click back into this plan here for Barry and Iris, and then navigate back to that report section, you may have noticed before, there is an option at the top here to allow you to select a template. And we'll find both of those templates we just created here. That's going to automatically fill in the gaps here, check off those boxes that we selected on that template, and then we can download that particular report layout very quickly and easily. Perfect. Last thing I'll mention here as it relates to report templates, you may have noticed there is an option within a client plan to save a report template as well. So, for most template types that we're going to look at in just a bit here, you do have to navigate back to that templates area in the advisor portal to create those templates. But for report templates in particular, as a quality of life feature for you, we do include the ability to save new report templates right within a client plan. So, there's no need to click back into the advisor area if you're making your report selections for a client and thinking to yourself, I'd love to have this saved as a template. You can actually scroll down to the bottom of the page and just save that new template right within the client plan. And just like, in the advisor portal, if you create them there, you'll find that going forward within the template dropdown across all of your client plans. Perfect. So that pretty much covers it for report templates. The next template type that we're going to dive into for today are planning access templates. So back in the advisor portal, I'm going to click back into the templates module and then into the planning access area. So you may notice here there's quite a bit of overlap between creating report templates and planning access templates. The checklist that we see on our screen here when it comes to planning access is for the most part identical to what we see for reports. Planning access, of course, does have a little bit of a different, purpose, different functionality in RightCapital. So I'm going to start by explaining a little bit about what planning access is in general. The primary function of planning access is if you're someone who's inviting clients to have access to their financial plans in RightCapital, you can use the planning access tab for that client within your client list to pick and choose what modules that client will actually be able to see when they log into their financial plan. So let's say we've invited Barry here to have remote access to his plan, And maybe for now, we only want him to have access to the balance sheet, maybe his asset allocation and tax allocation for that big picture view of his overall investments, and then maybe the retirement analysis for some of those probability of success visuals. Let's say for now, that's our selections in terms of what we'd like Barry to be able to see, in addition to the profile, of course, where he can do some of his own data entry. So we can click Save here for that planning access checklist. And then if we open this plan, rather than opening it normally from the advisor view, if we choose to open this plan in client access mode by clicking this downward facing arrow here, that's going to allow us to impersonate the client's perspective. So we'll be able to see now, rather than all of the planning modules that you would normally see as the advisor, we now only see the balance sheet, those handful of investment modules, and the retirement section, as well as the profile that we've chosen for this client's planning access. So that's, in general, what planning access is used for. I do want to quickly mention, even if you're not inviting clients to have access to their plans in RightCapital, a lot of advisors do like to use planning access as a way to present to clients in software, just like what we have in this example here. You can pick and choose which modules you'd like to present to the client and in what order. And then by opening the plan in client access mode, as I just did, you'll be able to have that more streamlined view of those specific modules you've selected and walk the client through those in a specific order. So in general, that's what planning access is going to do for us in RightCapital. And just like with reports, if you find yourself giving clients access to the same set of modules on a regular basis, or if you just like to pre-save certain sets of planning access for certain clients, that's where planning access templates rather come into play here. So you'll notice I have a full access template here with all of these boxes checked. So that's just one example of what you're able to do with these templates. But for the most part, I do tend to see advisors take similar approaches with planning access templates as they do with report templates. You can create a more basic level planning access for newer clients potentially, and then a more thorough, planning access template for more established clients potentially. Sometimes I do see advisors that maybe have more niche service offerings create templates focused around specific service offerings. So for example, you can create one that's maybe tax planning, and you can check off some of those tax modules and some other essentials. You can create some that are maybe for investment planning, education planning, so on and so forth. And you can have all of those saved in advance so that as you create new client plans in RightCapital, you can quickly and easily apply different planning access templates to different clients. Something I will say is that, unlike what I just did a moment ago, you will want to make sure to click the Save button in the lower right after creating these templates to make sure that your changes are saved before, moving on to another screen here. So the last thing to cover here when it comes to planning access templates is, of course, how to apply these templates. You may have noticed towards the bottom of this page, there is an Apply Template button right here that you can use to apply these planning access templates to individual clients, one or more clients potentially. You can mix and match different combinations of clients, or you can even apply templates here to entire client groups. So maybe you have a set of planning access selections that you just want to be used across your entire book of business or all of your existing clients, for instance. You can either select all clients, existing clients, or any other client group or combination of client groups. And then by clicking Save here, that would automatically apply that template to every client within that group. So this is a great feature here in the templates module if you do need to apply a template in bulk to multiple clients at a time. But I do want to point out quickly in the clients tab in your client list, when you are looking at a client's planning access, there is also a feature here to apply planning access templates. So, if you're about to present to a client, for example, and maybe you have a planning access template dedicated to, that presentation in advance, this is a quick and easy way to apply that template to that client plan right before, potentially opening that plan in client access mode and having all of those modules in your desired order. Perfect. So as I mentioned, a lot of overlap between report templates and planning access templates. There's lots of different strategies that I've seen advisors employ with these, but the ones I just covered are some of the more common approaches that I tend to see advisors take. Perfect. So next, we're going to dive a little bit into onboarding templates. And onboarding templates are the newest template type. These were added a couple of months ago as a result of some changes that we made to the client onboarding process, the initial data entry process in RightCapital. So we're going to spend a little bit of extra time on onboarding templates just because they are a bit newer. First off, what these actually accomplish for us in RightCapital is they allow you to change the order of the data entry steps or potentially the design, the layout of the initial data entry for new clients that you've created in RightCapital. So for those of you that are more established RightCapital users, for a long time, the initial data entry process in RightCapital was 6 steps, family, income, savings, net worth, expenses, and goals. Those were the default 6 steps for initial data entry. And whenever you create a new client plan in RightCapital, it's always going to walk you through that initial data entry process first and foremost before unlocking the rest of the client plan. And I do actually have a client plan on deck here in the initial onboarding process that we can take a look at. So if we pop into the Walter White plan here, we'll be able to see, this is what that 6-step process looks like. And you may have noticed I did make some changes to this client's process. We'll dive into that in just a second here, but it's going to look like this, a little bit different than what we just saw within the, actual RightCapital financial plan, but you'll walk through this 6-step process, enter all of that client's information. So you may have also noticed a moment ago when I pulled up Walter White in my client list, there's an additional tab here to the right, located between client access and planning access. So for clients who have not yet surpassed that initial data entry process, there is now an additional onboarding tab for these clients. And this is where, at the individual client level, you can rearrange the order of these steps, potentially exclude or include certain steps, or even rearrange the layout of that data entry process. So let's reset this to the default view here. This is what it would be normally, as a starting point for you, family through goals. That's the original 6-step data entry process. But let's say maybe for, Walter here, maybe we don't want to include goals in the process, that initial process. Maybe that's something we want to go over together during that initial meeting. So for now, we're going to exclude that. And then maybe we want the net worth to be first, have savings be second here. There we go. So we can drag net worth to the top here and have that be the first step. Well, I should say the second step. It is worth noting that the family section of the profile where the client and potentially co-client are entered is always the first step here. So something to keep in mind, but we'll have net worth be next, then savings, so the client can enter their contribution to those accounts that they just entered, and then maybe income and expenses, third and fourth here. If I click save and then reopen the client plan here for Walter, we'll notice now that the data entry process has changed. And we have the family section first, then we have net worth where we can enter those accounts, savings, income, and expenses. So this, new onboarding template feature gives you more control over that initial data entry process, whether you're doing that yourself, on behalf of the client prior to that initial meeting, or whether you're inviting a client to potentially do some of their own data entry remotely, prior to, meeting for the first time. So very valuable. It is worth mentioning one more time that, you won't have the onboarding tab available for all clients. If you've already surpassed that initial data entry process for an existing client, as I have with Barry here, that onboarding tab disappears. As a quick note, for those of you who might be a little bit newer, after surpassing that initial data entry process, you can revisit those steps within the profile area. All the different sections of the profile correspond to those different steps of the initial data entry. So just a quick note there. So if you don't see an onboarding tab for a client, just note that they've already surpassed that initial data entry phase. Clicking back into the templates tab and taking another look at onboarding templates, this is your opportunity to create a template in advance for those onboarding steps, and more quickly and easily apply those templates to clients as you create new plans in RightCapital. So just like what we just walked through for Walter, we can Add a new template by clicking the new template button. We can rename that template. So we'll call this new data entry. We'll click the check mark there to save the name change, and then we can rearrange those steps. Something I want to mention at this point is that in addition to the original, 6 steps here, you do now have the ability to add the vault as well as risk questionnaires to clients' onboarding template in RightCapital. So quick note on risk, this is a feature available for premium and platinum RightCapital subscribers. And the vault, that should be available for mostly everybody as well. You can choose to add these features to that initial data entry process so that clients can upload files and documents and other important things into the vault without having to finish that data entry process first. And they can also complete risk questionnaires as a part of that initial process as well. Last thing I'll mention here when it comes to onboarding templates, in addition to the traditional profile card view, there is also a new option for initial data entry, which is the blueprint view. And this was something our team added as a result of advisor feedback. The blueprint module in the profile section of each client plan is a pretty popular tool for reviewing a client's inputs. It's going to consolidate all of the information entered into those different profile areas using some more client-friendly visuals. And we've now given you the option to potentially change the data entry template to reflect the visuals that you would see in the blueprint area. So I'm actually going to do that here, add those additional steps, and change it to the blueprint template type for this new onboarding template here. And I'm going to click back into my client list. I'll pull Walter White back up here just so I can click back into his onboarding tab. Very similar to planning access, you'll find an option here to select an onboarding template and apply that to a client as long as they're still within that onboarding phase. So I'll select that new template we just created here, click save. And now if I reopen Walter's plan one more time, we'll see, again, family as the first step here. But if we click into net worth, you'll notice, it looks a little bit different. We now have that blueprint version of the net worth screen here. Clients can still add accounts and link accounts just like they normally would, but we have it laid out in a bit more of a client-friendly visual here. And same thing goes for goals. We have the tile view as well as the timeline view for the goals area, and then income, savings, and expenses are all consolidated into a single step of the data entry here. So, rather than having to do those 3 steps separately, those are all combined into this area of the data entry process. I do have the vault added as well. So if a client wanted to upload some account statements, tax returns, so on and so forth as a part of that initial process, they'd be able to do so here. And then that risk questionnaire as well is present as well. So the client can click on this, complete that risk assessment, and you'll be able to see their score after they complete the initial data entry process. Perfect. So that does cover it for onboarding templates. Wanted to spend a little bit of additional time on that just because it is a little bit newer. So I'm going to take a quick sip of water here, folks, and then we can dive into our next template type, which is snapshot templates. All right. So next up here, we have snapshot templates. Snapshot, again, is one of the more popular tools in RightCapital. This area allows you to fully customize the report here to essentially showcase all of the essential information within a client plan all in one place. And for those of you who might be a bit newer, I will show this off within a client plan here to start us off. So let me click back into my plan for Barry Allen. I did rearrange the order of these tabs a little bit, so apologies if it's a bit out of order, but the dashboard snapshot page is, would typically be located first within a client plan. And as we can sort of see here, this pulls in all of that information that the client would need to see to get a holistic view of their entire plan as a whole. So we can see the client's probability of success, their overall net worth and balance sheet, things like their current investment allocation, the breakdown of those assets that have been entered into their profile, their tax allocation or tax diversification, and more. So this is a great way to really showcase all that information on 1 to 2 pages. Just to quickly, highlight some of the features here, you can rearrange the order of these tiles by dragging and dropping these into whatever order you'd like. If you want to ever remove a tile that you might not need to touch on with that particular client, you can always click the X icon in the upper right and simply, delete that tile. And you'll also find, a few dozen additional items that you can add, key metrics, charts, and information from across the various planning modules in RightCapital to, again, really tailor these to the individual household that you're working with and showcase all of that most important information that you plan to touch on, in those reports, in those client meetings, and so on. So that's a, brief overview of the snapshot module in RightCapital. Before moving on, I will go ahead and reset the order of the planning modules in this plan just for ease of use here. Perfect. So back in the templates area, if we take another look at the snapshot section, you may have noticed I have a couple samples here of just things that I've seen advisors do with the snapshot that have proven to be efficient and popular with their clients. One of the strategies that some advisors choose to employ is designing a snapshot template that's sort of a welcome page. So some advisors like to call this the 1,000-foot or 10,000-foot overview of the plan. Especially for newer clients, you can utilize the text boxes within the snapshot here to write whatever you'd like, essentially. So if you want to provide some resources for the client, either to find information within their plan or get in touch with you if you need to plan a follow-up session or something along those lines, that's a great way to use the text boxes in the snapshot. And something nifty that I want to highlight here is that when you apply these snapshot templates to a client plan, the notes will carry over. So again, if you wanted to create sort of a welcome to RightCapital style of snapshot template here, you could apply this to one or more clients at a time. And when they log into their plan for the first time, if you've invited them to have access, by default, this will be the first thing they see when they log in. So this is a great way to potentially utilize snapshot templates in your practice. I do have another one here to showcase in terms of notes. As I mentioned, the text boxes in these, snapshot templates are a great opportunity to leave notes for clients. And a lot of advisors will use the snapshot as the primary place to leave, meeting notes and written recommendations for clients as well. You can sort of pair up certain visuals and pieces of information in the snapshot with notes that the client can review and keep track of going forward within the plan. So this is just an example of what that kind of template might look like. Of course, you're free to choose which pieces of information you'd like to include in these templates. And, of course, you'll be able to write your own notes in here as well. But this is just another example of something we can do with snapshot templates. In terms of actually applying these templates to a client plan, similar to one of the other template types we just looked at, there is an apply template button in the lower right here. So let's say maybe we just invited Barry Allen to have access to his plan for the first time, and we want to use this welcome template. You can select this template here, click the apply template button at the bottom, and then we can choose Barry Allen as the client. One thing I do want to highlight here that is important to keep in mind, if you've already written notes within any of those note boxes within this client's snapshot in their actual client plan, applying a new template will overwrite those notes. So that is definitely something important to remember. If you have a lot of notes written in a plan, it's definitely important. You don't want to lose those notes potentially by overwriting them with a template. So just be mindful of that. It is a good habit to maybe double check the client plan and make sure that there aren't any important notes in the snapshot before applying a new template there. But in this case, we are going to go ahead and hit confirm here to apply that template to Barry's plan. Before taking a look there, I do want to quickly just highlight, just like planning access, you can apply these snapshot templates to one or more clients at a time. So maybe you wanted to apply this welcome template, for example, to all of your prospect clients at the same time. That's something you could potentially do here. You can apply those to entire client groups. But that being said, let's take another look at Barry's plan here. Because I rearranged the order to be the RightCapital default, the dashboard snapshot is the default landing page in RightCapital. So this is the first thing we see here. We have that welcome template we just applied, and we have all of those key pieces of information here as well. Perfect. So that does cover it for snapshot templates. Let's quickly dive into our next template type here, which is for task templates. This will probably be a more brief overview, but for those of you who might be unfamiliar, tasks in RightCapital are a means for you to more directly communicate with clients within the financial plan in RightCapital. So again, if you are inviting clients to have access to their plans, you can utilize tasks to help clients keep on track of some important planning tasks, and they can see those tasks within their RightCapital client plan. They'll be notified potentially by email as well if you'd like to turn on those notifications for your clients, and they can complete some of those important tasks. So I have a sample here of just one example of what advisors tend to do with task templates. The main difference when it comes to creating templates for tasks is that, within a client plan, typically you would only create and apply one task at a time, but task templates are useful in that they enable you to add multiple tasks. You can wrap up multiple tasks into a single template, and then you can apply those to clients, one or more clients all at once. So that's really where task templates come into play here. So just like other template types, you'd be able to create a new template by clicking new template in the upper right. We can rename those templates whatever we'd like, and then we can add those individual tasks to the task template. So the one thing I do want to highlight here, so the one thing not to get tripped up on in terms of adding tasks to a template, the due date rather than a specific calendar date will be a number of days out from the initial due date. So what that means is, the initial due date is whatever day in reality that you would apply this template to a client in RightCapital. So you're not locked into a specific calendar day for these templates. Let's say, maybe we want the first task to be due on the day that we apply this template to, let's say the client. So, 0 days out from the initial due date, that's going to be due the day of, the day that this template's applied. Maybe we want this task to be due a week out. We can make that 7 days or 2 weeks out and so on and so forth. So, you can create multiple tasks in these templates, and you can, include the due dates this way, the number of days out from the initial due date. Perfect. So now that we reviewed that quickly, I will show us where we can apply task templates in RightCapital. There are actually two different areas that we can apply task templates, and one of them is right here in the advisor portal, and the other is within a specific client's plan. So to apply a template in the advisor portal, you would need to click into your tasks tab. If you have Right Flows enabled like I do, the tasks dashboard is located in the Right Flows area. If not, you will simply find a tasks tab at the top here. Regardless, these are the same module, regardless of whether you have Right Flows enabled or not. So, here we can view all of our tasks across our entire book of business for all of our clients. And the benefit of adding task templates here in the advisor portal is that we can apply these to multiple client groups or multiple combinations of clients. So if you ever have one or more tasks that you need to send out to your entire book of business all at once, that's certainly something you can do. Or, maybe you want to, in this case, assign the onboarding template to all of your prospect clients. You can apply these templates to multiple clients at a time here. So that's the benefit of, assigning task templates in the advisor portal tasks area. Of course, you can always find the tasks tab within the dashboard area of a specific client plan as well. And the process to actually add those task templates is identical here. The main difference being, we're only applying these tasks to the specific client that we're working with here. So, if I was to apply it here to Barry Allen's plan, this is going to be applied to just Barry and Iris and none of the other clients in my client list. Perfect. One thing I do want to mention as it relates to tasks, just a best practice, a tip for you here is that, if even if you're not inviting clients to have access to their plans in RightCapital, you may have noticed that I have some tasks in this template that are actually hidden from the client view and actually are assigned to myself as the advisor. So, even you can use task templates to create tasks for clients to complete, but you can also create task templates to create lists of tasks for yourselves to complete as the advisors. And as I mentioned, even if the client doesn't have access to these plans, you can use these for your own purposes, which can certainly be very helpful for things like quarterly or annual reviews potentially, and client onboarding, processes and things of that nature as well. So definitely something to keep in mind there as you're adding tasks either to a client plan or to a template. You can always, assign these to yourself as the advisor. You can assign these to assistants as well, and you can choose to hide these from the client view. All right. So our next template type that we're going to dive into here is vault templates. So the vault in RightCapital is represented by the folder icon. Just like tasks, there is an advisor level vault where you can look at the vault storage across all of your clients all in one place. But of course, there is also an individual client vault located within each and every client plan. So if we take another look here in Barry's plan, we can see Barry and Iris's vault. This is an opportunity for you and your clients to share uh, documents and other files with one another and have those be stored right here within the financial plan. So certainly a very useful feature. When it comes to report templates, what those enable you to do is actually create a folder layout in advance. So, you may have noticed in that plan, I had a couple folders there. By default, in the vault in RightCapital, there won't be any folders. It'll just be a blank slate like this. And you can always create folders within an individual client's vault. But let's say maybe you, ask the majority of your clients to upload the same sorts of documents, the same sorts of files, and you want to have one or more folders, exist by default within those client plans so that when the client visits the vault for the first time, they see all of those folders there ready to go, and they know exactly where to upload all of the different documents that you're requesting. That's where Vault templates really come into play here. So you may notice here that there's an add folder button to the far right. This is where we can start adding some of those folders that we can, name here. So I'll just add a few as an example. Let's add account statements as one folder. We'll add tax returns as another folder. And then just to round things out here, we'll do insurance and annuity contracts. Perfect. All right. So now that we've got our folders here, these actually save automatically. So as you add folders to a Vault template, those will be saved as you add each folder and rename each folder. So there won't be a need to click any save button anywhere. These will be saved automatically. Of course, you may want to rename your template as well, which we can always do at the top here. And then just like some other template types that we've looked at, you can apply these Vault templates right here in the templates area by clicking the apply template button in the lower right. So something I do want to make sure I note, if you have multiple templates created, each template will have its own apply template button. So when you click this button, it's going to be applying whichever template you're currently viewing here in the templates area. And that's going to be true across all the different template types. So just wanted to make sure I mentioned that there. But you can apply these templates to one or more clients. Again, you can apply these to all of your clients potentially. You can apply these to entire client groups or one or more individual clients. And something very important to keep in mind here is that if you've already uploaded files to a client's vault or placed specific folders in a client's vault, applying a vault template to a client will never overwrite any existing information in their vault. It will only add those folders on top of what's already there. So you never have to worry about accidentally erasing folders or deleting files and so on. Those folders will be added in addition to whatever is already present in that client's individual vault. Something that I want to mention as it relates to Vault templates really quick before moving on is just that this isn't somewhere we can actually upload files to a client's Vault. This is just for folders, so you won't have the ability to add files to Vault's templates. That being said, it's not technically part of the templates functionality, but I do want to touch on it because it is a common question related to Vault templates. In the Advisor Portal Vault, you do actually have a shared documents area that enables you to upload individual files to one or more client vaults at a time. So this is a feature that allows you to do that. So uh, again, just to reiterate, Vault templates are for folder layouts only. If you are finding yourself wanting to upload specific files, maybe a welcome message or something like that to multiple client vaults, or potentially all of your clients, as I've done here, you can add files to this page, the shared documents page, and you can then choose which clients or client groups you'd like to share that specific document or folder with. So that is a feature you have access to as well as it relates to the vault in RightCapital. All right. We do have one more template type to touch on here, folks. So with the last 4 or 5 minutes here, we're going to touch on budget categories. So category templates in RightCapital allow you to create different sets of budget categories, income and expense categories that can then be applied to one or more client plans. So just to quickly cover what budget planning or budget categories are used for from a planning perspective, these have a couple of different purposes. Let's actually dive back into Barry Allen's plan here, just so we can take a look at where these budget categories are utilized. Firstly, as you're filling out data entry for clients in the expenses and goals areas, you will be asked to enter the client's living expenses. Pre-retirement and retirement living expenses are entered during that initial data entry process. Within both of these cards, in addition to a simple approach option, which is just going to ask you for an average monthly expense amount, there is an additional option for a detailed expense worksheet. And this is one of the main areas that budget categories come into play. We can have clients break down their monthly expenses across multiple categories here. So for those clients who maybe are a little bit more, detail oriented when it comes to their expenses, or if you're going to be assisting them with, budgeting and so on, this is a great opportunity to have them break out their expenses during that initial data entry process. So that's one of the places, or two of the places, I should say, we can utilize those budget categories. The other area potentially that budget categories come into play is in the budget analysis, which is located in the dashboard module. So this client's maybe not the best example. Let me pull up a client here where we can actually take a look at the budget tool. If you're having clients link some of their bank accounts and credit cards, all of that transaction information is going to flow into the budget analysis here in the dashboard. And this is another area where budget categories are essential. We can help clients set their monthly budget across all of those various expense categories and income categories as well. We can fine tune which categories we'd like to appear here, and then clients can, stay on top of their monthly spending across all of those different categories. So that's the other area where budget categories are very important. And for a long time, budget categories were something that were specific to each and every client. And as a reminder for those of you who might be a bit newer, in the gear icon settings tab of each client plan, there is actually a budget categories area where we're able to add new income and expense categories and rename and potentially delete categories as well for this specific client household. So let's say, maybe Sadie is an actor or a musician potentially. We can add additional income categories for things like royalties. We can, add additional expense categories. Maybe we want to, break out a client's mortgage payments into a category separate from the rest of their housing expenses. We can add those new categories, and we can even, rename or potentially delete existing categories as well. So you've always had the functionality to update the income and expense categories at the client level, but with the addition of budget category templates. I believe a bit earlier this year, actually, we introduced the ability to create templates and to apply those to one or more clients, a bit more easily. So rather than having to tweak the budget categories for each and every client, you can walk through those same steps within a template here. You can add those new categories right to the template, and then we can save and apply those templates to our clients a bit more easily. So we don't have to walk through the steps of, adding these new categories to each and every client plan. When it comes to categories, budget categories, I do want to mention just because of the complexity related to account aggregation. If you're having clients link their bank accounts and credit cards, as I mentioned, those transactions will feed in automatically. We can't apply new category templates to multiple client groups at once like we could with some of these other templates. So just something to keep in mind there. These are certainly helpful and they will still save you quite a bit of time, but these do need to be applied to individual clients. So I will quickly just show us all how we can apply those templates as well. Let me click back into the plan here for Sadie Green. I'm going to navigate to the gear icon, settings tab, back into that budget categories area here. And in the lower right, you'll find an apply template button. And this is going to walk us through the process of setting up those new budget categories using our templates that we've created. So I mentioned some of the complexities surrounding account aggregation. It will ask you to remap existing categories to the new categories to make sure that everything matches up properly with those new categories that we've added. So we want to make sure that, as that client's budget analysis pulls in that transaction information, that nothing gets lost or incorrectly categorized. So you will certainly want to make sure to scroll down the list here and just make sure that these old categories match up correctly with the new categories. And then you can click save to, apply those templates to those individual client plans. Perfect. So that covers it for budget categories, which is our last template type here. There is one additional thing I want to touch on quickly just before diving into the Q&A here. It's something that's pretty important to keep in mind, and that's going to be setting new default templates in RightCapital. So, this is a feature that is sometimes overlooked, but can be really, really helpful for making RightCapital your own, tailoring some of the information within your client plans to better suit your practice and your clientele. And what I mean by that is you can actually replace some of the RightCapital defaults for things like planning access, snapshots, vaults templates, etc., with your own templates. And that way, when you create new clients going forward, there won't even be a need for you to apply those templates to those new clients. They'll be in place as a default, going forward. So I definitely want to make sure I touch on this. You can always replace those default templates in RightCapital by clicking into the More menu here in the upper right corner, then clicking into the Client Settings, Client Groups tab. So Client Groups is where we're able to do that. One quick note, your Client Settings tab may be, next to Templates here at the top, depending on your account setup, but regardless of where it's located, it will be Client Settings, Client Groups. And this area is where we can replace those default templates for new clients. So within client groups here, you will always have to make your selections here in terms of default for new clients and default for new leads. Where do we want those new clients to go when we create them ourselves in RightCapital, or when they sign up using that RightCapital leads URL that some advisors utilize for prospecting purposes? So these new clients will automatically get filtered into one of these two groups. And for these groups, we can replace the default templates. So maybe, for all of our new clients, we'd actually prefer that they have the welcome template for the snapshot, for instance. Maybe we want them to have that set of folders in the vault right from the get-go, and so on and so forth. You can replace these 5 specific template types: planning access, onboarding, snapshot, vault, and budget categories. And going forward, that's going to make it so that those templates are used right from the very beginning, right when you create that client plan. Last thing I'll mention here, when it comes to setting new default templates, this will not impact any of your existing clients. So by setting a new default snapshot template, for instance, this won't change the snapshot for any of our existing clients that we've already created, within RightCapital. This is only going to impact new clients that we create from this point on. So just to quickly demonstrate that, let me just quickly create a new client plan now that I've created or changed rather some of those default templates. I'll input this client's information now. I am going to skip the data entry process just for the sake of time here. But, if we take a look at the dashboard in this new plan I just created, it's using that welcome template that I set as the new default. And if I click into the vault here, it should also have those new folders that I created in that vault template as well. So again, using those templates to set new defaults in RightCapital is really pivotal in tailoring RightCapital to really work for you and to be your own and to suit your practice and your specific book of business.